Welcome to another video from Demystifying Proposals. Our mission is to break down the proposal process and make proposals make sense. In this video, we talk about how to review proposals, the best way to learn to read an RFP or an RFQ, and provide a quality review of the ensuing proposal. Proposals are an important part of the business development lifecycle. Make sure you understand how. Conducting a proposal review is one of the most important things proposal managers do. A good proposal review makes a proposal so much better. A bad proposal review can derail the whole proposal process. What makes a good proposal review is reviewers who take the time to understand the stage of the proposal. The expectations for completeness and other factors for pink, red, gold, and white glove are different, and you should understand that as a reviewer. Reviewers also should know a little bit about the work to be performed. You don't have to be an expert, but you do need to bring some experience to the area. Reviewers should read the RFP and try and understand the requirements. Nothing is more frustrating than a comment that creates a compliance issue. And reviewers who are constructive. Remember, the proposal team has worked hard to this point. They want your comments, but please offer ways to improve, not just telling them what they did wrong. One of the important things to understand is that proposals are built over time and are based on these reviews. Proposals are iterative and they go through lots of phases. Understand the color team reviews and the phases of opportunity development. Each draft builds on the last one. Each phase is reviewed to see how compliant, responsive, and compelling the draft is. And that's what we mean by building a proposal. The proposal manager will supply writers with an outline that is compliant to the RFP requirements. The heading should provide a guide as to which part of the RFP each section is responding to. Proposal responses change with each review. The pink team draft, for example, should be just that, a draft with enough meat on the bones to show what the authors are intending to write, but not so set in stone that it can't be flexed if the reviewers recommend changes. 80% complete is what we say on average. Red team, however, should be a more complete document at 90% complete, with win themes and differentiators and proof points included. On this slide, we show some broad definitions of color team reviews. These are generally accepted, but not specific to every company. Your company may have slightly different definitions. So a pink team, generally speaking, about 80% of the content will have been developed. You should have an outline for every section, but maybe not full text. At red team, you'll be at about a 90% complete with final graphics and tables. You want to show the reviewers pretty much everything that you're going to have in the final, but they might not be completely written yet. Those last couple of reviews, though, are limited to a select few reviewers because at this point you're very far along in the proposal process. So the gold team is generally about 95% complete, and it's generally scheduled for just a few days before submission. And it should have a technical edit done, the price volume should be included, and the proposal content should be pretty complete, like we said, 95% complete. At white glove, you should have a complete proposal. The white glove review is really just to do a final document check to make sure it's clean, there's no typos, all the graphics are final, and you really shouldn't make changes at that point. Like the last slide, this is a notional schedule for a proposal. Typical proposal takes about 30 days. So on day 1, you would count day 1 as the day the RFP drops. Day 30 would be the submission date, and then you fill in your schedule for the days in between. We have a whole training on how to build a schedule, but this is generally what goes into a proposal schedule. You'll have a kickoff, you'll have the questions vetting, you'll have your pink team, red team, gold team, and white glove, as we discussed on the last slide. There's also generally green teams, and those are to review the cost volume. They're very similar to the pink team and red team and gold team and white glove. It's just that you're reviewing the cost volume, and that includes evaluating the price to win. And then obviously the submission is the most important date on the schedule. So in this next section, we talk about what you should do as a reviewer. There's a lot to keep in mind. First and foremost, read the RFP. If you've never seen an RFP before, let the proposal manager know, and he or she will walk you through to understand the structure. As a general rule, Section C is the statement of work, the performance work statement, aka what needs to be done. Section L is the proposal instructions, the way the government expects the proposal to be laid out, as in technical approach, management approach, etc., as well as font size requirements, number of pages per section. Section L should also match Section M, hopefully. Doesn't always. Section M is the evaluation criteria. That's the way the government will evaluate the proposal. The review will use these elements to mirror how you expect the proposal to be reviewed and scored by the government. Typical federal proposal RFP includes these sections A through M. Sometimes they're not lettered, sometimes they're numbered, but generally speaking, these are the sections that you'll find in most RFPs. The sections in red are the ones that affect the proposal team the most. So again, section C, as we talked about, section L, and section M. Those are the sections that will have the most impact on the proposal itself. Section L, the proposal instructions, will include the submission instructions. So are you emailing it? Do you have to produce a hard copy? Are you submitting on a portal? All of those things impact the proposal schedule more than they impact the reviewer, but it's good to know that from a reviewer's perspective. It will also include page limits and font sizes. As a reviewer, you should pay attention to those things. Hopefully there's somebody who's doing a compliance check, but it's good for the reviewers to be aware. Then there's also the number and names of each volume section. So technical, management, staffing, resumes, past performance, business, which is sometimes called cost or price volume, terms and conditions are sometimes included, organizational conflict of interest is sometimes included. These can all be sections of the RFP and therefore sections of the proposal itself. Sometimes management's more important than technical and it comes first. Sometimes staffing is part of management. Resumes and past performances are usually appendices, but all of these elements you need to understand as a reviewer so that you understand how the proposal should be presented to you. So section C is your statement of work or your performance work statement. That is what the customer needs done. It's usually broken down into task areas and it's usually incorporated into the technical volume somewhere. But where exactly it goes in the technical volume is sometimes tricky. Sometimes the instructions, the proposal section L will say, we want you to write to the statement of work in this section. Sometimes they'll ask you to write to the statement of work in more than one section, and then you have to figure out where you're really going to put it in and how you're going to reference it in the other section. So that's why it can be tricky, and as a reviewer, you should be cognizant of that. Section M, the evaluation criteria, is how they're actually going to score your proposal, and it will include which sections are the most important, which are the most highly rated, and how they're actually going to score you based on confidence, based on relevancy. There's different factors that they can use, and those can be important sometimes as you're doing your review. One of the things that's really important for reviewers to remember is that proposals are scored. They're not read per se. Now they should read well, they should be written well, but really when the evaluators get down to it, they're scoring you against section M. So it's important that the proposal is laid out according to the proposal instructions in section L. If your proposal is not compliant, they won't even bother to do the rest of the review. So that's absolutely the most important thing from the get-go. But then you should also incorporate all the evaluation criteria, as I said before. Hopefully the evaluation criteria in section M matches the information in section L. But if there's information in L that's not in M, you need to include it. If there's information in M that's not in L, you need to include it. And then you have to address all the tasks in the statement of work. If you're particularly page limited, this can be very tricky. So as a reviewer, you need to think about, have they really addressed all of the information in the statement of work, even if they've taken some shortcuts and done tables or haven't dug down into every single detail. Is there enough there? Is there enough meat on the bones for the government evaluators? And then, of course, in order to make the proposal responsive and compelling, there should be some secret sauce from your company. What's the benefit of your solution? What are your win themes? What are your discriminators? And as a reviewer, you should think about those things. So hopefully, as part of the review, you got a proposal in brief or a step or gate review presentation. And that information should have things like what is the solution? What do they believe the benefits are to the customer? And does that information match section C, as in what the customers asked us to do? Those are the hard requirements of the RFP. We call those the hard requirements because they're actually required. Then you want to familiarize yourself with the win themes and the discriminators and the hot buttons that have been found during the capture stage of the proposal. Do they come across in what's been written? Are they responsive to what you think you know about what the customer wants? Those are what we call the soft requirements. They're not written down anywhere. They're just things that you've learned. And then, do you know of something else that the proposal team may want to consider? Maybe you work in a similar program and you've come up with something that for your customer that this customer might be interested in. Bring it to the table. You never know, it might be really valuable. And then you want to familiarize yourself with the proof points. So the proof points are, how are they validating that they've done this work before or close to it? And are those proof points compelling? Do they answer the question of how did they do it? Why was it so good? What was the benefit to the customer? And again, do you know something else that the proposal team might want to consider? Now, a good proposal manager should include in their invitation about how much time they expect the review to take. Generally speaking, we give most reviewers a day or at least several hours to do a review. But you should think about it and you should block time off to review. You may think that reviewing 10 pages will not take a long time because reading 10 pages wouldn't take a long time. But if you're doing a good job, you will go back and forth between what's written, what the RFP says, what the solution and the win themes are, and back and forth again. It's going to take longer than just reading 10 pages. Please let the proposal manager know if it doesn't look like you're going to have the time that you might need to review as soon as possible if that happens. And then as the reviewer, we ask you, generally speaking, to provide both inline comments and a score: blue, green, yellow, red. We'll talk more about that later. So in your comments, you want to provide suggestions for how to improve the text. But more importantly, you want to put yourself in the government shoes. Pretend you're a government GS-15. You have to read dozens of these proposals. So the first thing you're going to do is, did the author comply with section L? That's compliance. If they didn't, you're done, because like I said, the government is going to be done at that point. Did the author say that they will do the work in section C? And does the solution make sense? That's part of what you bring to the table as a reviewer. You should have some expertise in that area. Does that make sense to you? Can you understand it? Remember, not all of the evaluators are going to be well versed in the technology. So does it make sense? And does the story and the win themes and the proof points back up that solution? And then what score would you give the proposal based on section M? So there's two ways to think about government scoring. First, there's the scoring that's actually in section M. Like I said, sometimes that's based on confidence, right? Or highly confident that they can do this work. Sometimes it's based on relevance. This work is highly relevant to the work that we're asking to be done. So they score you based on that. But in the room, when they're doing their evaluation, what they do is they look for strengths, weaknesses, and deficiencies. These are the definitions of those terms. So a strength is any element of the proposal that the government views as a positive, any factor that will ensure successful contract performance. You can also have significant strengths, which is what the proposal team has been trying to do, right? So they're trying to generate strengths and significant strengths. The more strengths and significant strengths you have, the better your proposal will score. Then there are weaknesses. This is any element of the proposal that the government views as negative. It's a flaw in the proposal and it increases the risk. Again, you can have weaknesses and significant weaknesses. If you have significant weaknesses, the chances that you're going to get the contract are going to be diminished greatly. Then there are deficiencies, and deficiencies is a material failure of the proposal to meet a requirement. And if you have a deficiency in a proposal, almost always that pretty much means that you're done. Your proposal is not going to be scored well. You're probably not going to get the contract. So you really don't want to have any deficiencies. So never forget, again, that your proposal is being read and judged by human beings. So you want to make their job as easy as possible. That's why we put the information about section L and M and C in the headings so they know exactly what section the information should be referencing. But also we want to make it really easy for them to find the information that they're asking you to provide. Just make their jobs easier. If they're reading dozens of these things, make it as easy as possible for them. So in this section, we're going to talk about what you should look for in each section. So for the technical approach, you want to read the proposal section. And then you want to think about, is the content in active voice? That is the proposal team taking ownership of the work, showing that they're going to actively do the work? Does the approach map to the requirements in sections L and M? That is, to the evaluation criteria and the proposal instructions. And then for each task, does the section clearly show an approach? And does that approach differentiate you from your competitors? Not every part of every task may be a differentiator, but look for any differentiators that you can find. Then, does the approach have proof points to show that they have done the work before and successfully? And then when you finish the whole response to the tasks in section C and any technical approach requirements in sections L and M, do you see the win themes coming through? If not, make suggestions about how the proposal team can make those stronger. So for the management approach, you're going to pretty much look for the same information as you did for the technical approach. Is the content in active voice? Is the approach mapped to the requirements of sections L and M? Are there differentiators that differentiate you from your competitors? Say certain skill sets that the team that you're bringing that has that other competitors may not be able to bring. And then even in management, you need to have some proof points, right? Has your program manager managed a program that's similar in nature? Has your proposed technical architect done technical architecture for something that's similar in nature? You want to have proof points even in the management approach. Maybe you're talking about people having PMPs. Maybe you're talking about you're having a PMBOK-based management approach. Maybe you're talking about having ISO certifications, things that are proof points that show that your management approach is real. And then when you finish the whole response to the management approach, again, did you see those win themes coming through? If not, then make suggestions. So in past performance, the past performance layout should map to the requirements for sections L and M, just like the other sections, the technical and the management section. But then you also want your past performance to map to the PWS or the statement of work that is for this proposal. So you need to show how your past performance, how your experience means that you know how to do the work that you're showing in this proposal. So the best way to do that is to take your past performance and lay it out as if it were a response to this particular statement of work or this performance work statement. That's the best way to show that information. So hopefully that the proposal team has done that. And then, because not every single past performance may cover all of the PWS or all of the SOW, do all of the past performance citations as a whole cover all of the tasks in the statement of work or the PWS? If they don't, that's something you should question. And then when you finish the whole response to the past performance section, again, win themes, are they coming through? Can you see them? Your resumes obviously should be laid out according to L&M. Going to say that for everything. L&M, got to lay it out that way. There are usually specific requirements for each position. Sometimes those are in section C, sometimes they're in section H. So you need to make sure that any key personnel particularly, but sometimes just requirements for each position are laid out, and you need to make sure that the resumes answer those requirements. So sometimes that's education, sometimes that's security clearances, sometimes it's a kind of experience like managing a program or doing a particular kind of work. Make sure that the resume speaks to all of those things. And then look at the evaluation criteria. How are they going to score the resumes? Are they going to score them based on confidence? Are they going to score them based on relevancy? And then think about how you would score the resumes as a reviewer. Think about how you would score the resumes. If you were working for the government, if you were reading this proposal, put on your objective hat and think about it. Different companies have different ways of doing reviewer feedback, but here are some ideas. Most companies have some kind of a rating system. Generally speaking, it's blue, green, yellow, red for the reviewers to give an overall score for the proposal sections they reviewed. Blue is generally the highest score, red's generally the lowest score. It's kind of logical. It's rare for a section to be blue because blue generally means there's nothing that could be improved, and it's not very often that we get to that state. At Pink Team, it's not uncommon for sections to be red. You're still early on in the proposal development process. But as a reviewer, if you give this rating, be sure you're also telling the authors what they need to do to improve. If your proposal isn't getting blue and green ratings at Gold Team, then you should consider whether or not to submit it because you may not have time to revamp to get to those levels. So it might not be worth it to submit. Now, some companies have each reviewers complete a SWOT slide as well, a SWOT being strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that can be a way for the reviewers to explain their overall impression of each section. SWOT slides can be very effective to guide authors on big picture topics. Try not to just reiterate the comments that you already entered in the actual proposal, but instead provide more overall guidance, things that sort of roll up from your review of the sections themselves. Assuming that the proposal manager actually provides color team PowerPoints from the reviewers, they should use those to guide the review to lead the debrief discussion. Generally speaking, the order of those PowerPoints is usually based on the seniority of the reviewers. So the chief growth officer debriefs before the business lead, and the business lead debriefs before an adjacent business lead, and adjacent business lead debriefs before other delivery personnel, right? So generally in the hierarchy of the company. At the debrief, try and deconflict suggestions with the entire review team. So if you've gone in and looked at the comments from the reviewers, or as the PowerPoints are being presented, one reviewer says one thing and another reviewer says another thing, help the proposal team by trying to get the reviewers to have that discussion to try and land on one suggestion or another. But don't allow the debrief to devolve too far. Sometimes you need to table that discussion for another time and then be sure and set up that meeting right away. As a reviewer, you can also help with recovery. You should always be available to respond to questions from the authors about your comments or your slides or your overall guidance. But you can also volunteer to help with a particular section. If you think you know better than the current author, or you want to work with the current author in a particular section because you have some skills in that particular area, just be sure and talk to the proposal manager and the capture manager, and you're there as an adjunct, not necessarily as a replacement, right? So just think about that, but you can offer to help with the recovery. Remember also that the authors, the capture manager, and the proposal manager have the final say in whether your comments and guidance are implemented. So the author may not agree with the reviewer comment, and they are allowed to disagree with the reviewer's comments, but they must get approval from the capture manager and the proposal manager on things that they don't agree with, so that there's some documentation and some rationale about why they didn't incorporate a reviewer's feedback. And as a reviewer, it's best if they debrief you on any comments that they're not going to address, because chances are, if you're the reviewer on the pink team and you're the reviewer on the red team, you may have some questions as to something that didn't get incorporated from pink team to red team that you said should get incorporated. So if they don't want to get the same comment from you at the next review, hopefully they were giving you a heads up as to why that comment didn't get addressed. Hopefully this presentation gave you some thoughts and ideas about how to be a good reviewer and what to do when you're asked to be a reviewer. If you like this video, please click on the like button. If you'd like to subscribe, we are always happy to have folks who are interested in our content. We do publish on a fairly regular basis. If you have comments, those are always good to provide as well. Thank you, and look forward to talking to you next time at Demystifying Proposals.